Hey, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Bill Lester. I'm with University of Florida IFAS Extension Service here in Hernando County, which is in West Central Florida. And today we're going to be talking all about growing muscadine grapes. And I titled this Muscadine Grapes for Beginners because we're going to go over all the basics that you need to know to be able to grow muscadine grapes in your own yard. There is a lot more information online. I'm going to touch on that as we go through. Let me go ahead and start with my PowerPoint here. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And hopefully everybody can see that okay, and you can hear me okay. Like I said, we're going to be talking about growing muscadine grapes for beginners today. And let me start off with talking about grapes in Florida in general. Not all grapes are created equally. The situation that we have is there's a number of different species of grapes. So they're all in the genus Vitis or Vitis. And Vitis rotundifolia are muscadine grapes. Now, if you ever purchase and enjoy grapes from the grocery store, Thompson white seedless grapes, red seedless grapes, black seedless grapes, those are all a different species. They're Vitis vinifera, or European wine grapes. So if you're ever wondering, well, why can't I grow Thompson seedless grapes in Florida, or Chardonnay grapes, or something else that would go into a more traditional European type of wine because you really like them? Sorry, you can't do it. And we're going to explain in just a moment why you can't. And then we also have Vitis labrusca, which are Concord grapes, which are a different species. Now, Concord grapes will not do well in Florida because we don't get enough cold weather during the winter. Vitis vinifera is not going to do well here. And that's kind of a slightly blurry picture of the main culprit or reason why you can't grow European wine grapes here in Florida is because we have a very bad bacterial disease that's called Pierce's disease that's spread by this little insect here, and it's called a glassy-winged sharpshooter. So it's basically a little plant hopper or tree hopper that carries this bacterial disease around. All European wine grape species varieties are susceptible to it here in Florida. A long time ago, the early settlers to Florida got the idea, hey, we can grow a lot of different things in Florida. I bet you we can grow grapes also, and we can start making wine. And our weather is perfect for growing grapes. The soil is okay. You could grow European wine grapes soil-wise here, and they tried doing it and were promptly wiped out because these insects came along, and I mean, they damaged the grapevines for starters, but they also spread this disease. Pierce's disease, if you get it on a grapevine, the leaves turn brown and dried up, and it looks scorched. It looks like the plant just completely dried out. That's the kind of damage that bacteria does. So unfortunately, you cannot grow your Thompson seedless grapes and red seedless grapes and different wine grapes here in Florida because of that. And unfortunately, every year I'll see at some of the big box stores and other stores that don't normally sell plants, but they do in the spring when everybody wants to start a garden. I've seen them sold here in Central Florida, and they will not last for long at all. That is why we do have wineries here in Florida, but they all have muscadine wine, and that is the grapes that they grow to make the wine out of. So this, like I said, is the reason why we don't have European wine industry here in Florida. The nice thing about muscadine grapes is they are naturally resistant to this disease. They do not get it, so it's not going to be a problem with them. Muscadine grapes are native to the southeast U.S., so they're native to a wide part of Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Alabama, all the way up into the Carolinas. Muscadine grapes grow wild. And if any of you are avid hikers and you go out hiking in the woods here in Central Florida, sometimes you'll run across great big muscadine vines out in the forest. And I've seen them before that have been growing there for many, many years. The stems on them will get about 4, 5, 6 inches across. They get very large. the vines will run way up into the oak trees. They flower, they get grapes out in the wild. Wildlife eats all the grapes and enjoys them very much. So they are native. Now, most of the varieties that we grow, either commercially or for backyard or for homeowner use, are going to be improved varieties. They taste a little bit better than the wild ones out in the forest, but it's the same species. Now, University of Florida researchers have been working for a number of years trying to make crosses between Muscadine grapes and European wine grapes so that they end up being disease resistant and they taste more like the wine grapes because that's a flavor that more people are going to prefer. And they've had a lot of success with that. I'm not really familiar with the names of the different varieties that are available now, and I'm really not sure how widely available they are. They do exist. You may be able to purchase them online, but you'd have to look a little bit deeper into that for the Muscadine European wine grape crosses. I know that they're not widely available or widely planted, but I know that at the University of Florida Research Center in Apopka, they do have a vineyard there, and they've been working on that issue for many years. So hopefully, we're going to see more developments from University of Florida breeders and researchers on varieties that have disease resistance, but taste different from Muscadine grapes. So if any of you have you're not familiar with muscadines at all, you've never eaten them, you've never tried them, you've never tried muscadine wine, they taste a little bit different, kind of a unique taste. I personally like it very much. I've eaten muscadine grapes fresh. I think they're very tasty. I've drank muscadine wine before. We have a lot of local wineries here in Florida. And of course, we encourage everybody to go out there and support local growers, local wineries, support your local economy, and give them a try. And if nothing else, if they grow their own grapes, hopefully they'll show you what the vines look like growing. They'll give you some tips and tricks, and you'll get an idea of how a vineyard should look of muscadine grapes. But they do taste a little bit different. So if you never tried them before you go planting 100 muscadine vines, you may want to go out and sample some or try to find some at a grocery store to try to make sure it's the kind of thing that you and your family are going to enjoy eating. So muscadine grapes are very, very healthy for you. It's a great source of antioxidants. All grapes are, but muscadine grapes are included in that. Some of the drawbacks are going to be they have a thick skin. So I think we've all gotten spoiled on all the grocery store varieties of grapes because they're all seedless. When's the last time you saw seeded grapes at the grocery store? They all have a very thin skin. So you eat the whole thing. You don't have to spit the skin out. And that's not how, anybody older watching this presentation might remember when you were a child, grapes weren't like that. So muscadine grapes tend to have a thick skin that you're going to spit out. They have seeds. I do not believe that there are any widely available seedless varieties yet, but muscadine grapes are great for making wine with, and I think they have a unique taste. I kind of enjoy the taste myself, but it's one of those either you love it or hate it kind of situations. So planting location. Muscadine grapes are very well adapted to a wide range of soils and conditions here in the Southeast US. So if you think about it, it's a native plant, it's a native species, so it can deal with our soils, our weather, heat, humidity. It deals just fine with the amount of cold weather we get during the winter and our average cold temperatures. So very, very well adapted to grow in most people's backyards. Keep in mind that if you have a very sandy soil, which most of us do, your plants are going to require more irrigation because sand, if it's really pure sand, does not hold water very well at all. Working in some organic matter, homemade compost, a bag of compost, whatever kind of organic matter you might be able to purchase from a big box store. Mushroom compost works well. Black cow manure works well. That's going to help hold moisture in a little bit better. So you want to go ahead and mix some of that into the soil before you plant your vines. Like I said, muscadines, they're just fine with our average cold temperatures. which is great, but a little unique because I get so many questions from people saying, I want to start a food forest. I want to grow more food for myself, for my family. And I've already planted apples and I planted papayas and all these other things. It's like, we don't really get cold enough for apples to do well here. Pears do not do well in Florida because they have a disease that they promptly get and kills them also. Papayas can be a problem because the weather that we get here in Central Florida is almost always gets too cold for them for at least a few nights during the winter, and it's going to either seriously damage them or kill them. But muscadines are great because they're just right. They do just fine with the cold temperatures that we get here in Central Florida, North Florida, the state where muscadines are most widely grown for commercial growers, for actual farms where they grow them and sell them to be sold at grocery stores, I believe is Georgia. And Georgia gets colder than we do. So they do just fine here. And container grown vines, which for anybody watching this class who signed up for our workshop and went ahead and is going to be getting 3 vines, you can plant container grown vines any time of the year. A lot of times, if you look in plant catalogs and you order muscadine vines, and maybe you'd want to try ordering a couple different varieties, they usually ship them bare root, and the best time to plant them is during the winter, before early spring. But container grown grapes can be planted any time of the year. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to trellis muscadines, because they're a little bit unique. You can't really just plant them in the middle of your backyard and let them ramble and roam and grow on their own, because they are vines and they do best when they're trellised and trained, and they grow where you want them to instead of in just a huge, mass in the middle of your backyard. So here's a diagram of basically a single wire design, and there's also a double wire design and a couple other ways that you could trellis your muscadines that we're not going to get into specifically. University of Florida has a lot of really good information on this if you want to actually plant a lot of vines and create something that looks like the picture you see on your screen here. You're really going to kind of have to construct a vineyard, and it takes a little bit of infrastructure. It's going to take either landscape timbers or 4x4s, because these vines get very large, very heavy. You have to put up a sturdy trellis. Now, for a homeowner that has just, 3 vines, or maybe buys a few more, you have just a couple plants, you can grow them on a chain link fence. You can grow them on a trellis, but like I said, during the summer, they grow well, they grow large, they grow heavy. So make sure it's a very, very sturdy trellis. You could grow them on the metal cattle fencing, as long as you have sturdy stakes or supports holding it up. That would work on a very small scale. But if you want to go on a slightly larger scale, here's some pictures from a University of Florida publication on how to lay out a vineyard and grow the plants and how to manage them, basically. So you can see here that they have landscape timbers in the ground, probably sunk in concrete. That's going to keep them put. And then you want to put up a single wire trellis. So you can kind of see the wire going from pole to pole to pole. A lot of times what people will do is they drill a hole through that pole and run a very stiff wire through it. What you do is you plant the individual vines spaced appropriately apart, and you run them up a pole to grow up, and then the side shoots are going to grow sideways up the wire and down the wire. So what you end up with is individual plants that grow just one main stem up and then grow side to side. And then each one does that, and the wire trellis fills out and is covered with vines, covered with side shoots. That is where all the flowers are going to come from. That is where all the grapes are going to form. And what this does is it keeps the plants, the vines, elevated off of the ground, keeps the grapes off the ground, because if they're growing in contact with the ground, snails and insects are going to get them, animals are going to get them, they're going to rot. So it keeps the fruit up off the ground. Very easy for managing, very easy for picking, very easy for if you have to spray for a disease or an insect, and very productive also, because you're not just letting the vines grow as much as they want, because muscadine vines will grow like crazy during the summer. You have to really train them and manage them and have branches, just the branches growing that you want growing. So for pruning your muscadines, let's start kind of in the middle here. If you do not prune them at all, what you end up with is a huge tangled mess. And muscadine grapes are naturally deciduous. That means that at some point in the fall, all the leaves fall off. All winter long, all you have is just vines, and they're brown, and you may think like, oh no, my grapes died. What happened to them? They're just fine. They go through dormancy during the winter. They drop all their leaves. They need to be exposed to a certain amount of cold during the winter. They can deal with the cold temperatures we get here just fine because they are native to Florida and Southeast US. They'll take even more cold than what we're going to get right here. And then in the spring, they sprout out with new branches all up and down the vine, and they take off and they start growing. So this year, this coming year's flowers and fruits are going to be born on the brand new growth. So you ideally want to prune them sometime between mid-January and mid-March. If you prune them earlier than this, they're going to try to grow a little bit. And if we get a really cold freeze during January, February, or March, it is going to seriously damage the vines. So muscadines are a little bit different. You want to wait and prune them a tiny bit later. Like I said, between mid-January to mid-March, the same time of year that you would be pruning your crepe myrtles and peaches, plums, nectarines, some of your other deciduous fruit trees. You want to do all them basically late winter before they start their spring growth, but after most of winter and the cold weather is done. If you do not prune them at all, you will end up with huge muscadine grapevines and lots of leaves and growth and vines and branches and grapes, but it may be a little bit difficult to manage and maybe a bit of a tangled mess. So for the dormant vines, when they start to get new growth, they send out little shoots all up and down the vine, and those are called spurs. And a lot of the old vine, you're going to have to prune off of the main vines, and some of the brand new spurs that come up in the spring, you're going to have to trim and prune also. So what you end up with is new growth that's growing where you want it, up and down the trellis, if that's what you have, or up and down a chain link fence or whatever kind of trellis you have, and just kind of keep it organized and get new growth and eventually flowers and grapes exactly where you want them. So fertilizing is pretty simple. Fertilizing and soil management. Muscadine grapes prefer a pH of about 5.5 to 6.5, which is a little acidic. For most people, if you live out in the country, that's not going to be a huge problem. That's probably the pH of your soil, but without getting a soil test, you really don't know for sure. If you live very close to the coast, your pH will probably be higher. If you live in a new housing development or a home that was built within the last 10 years, where they brought a lot of fill dirt in to create your yard, and that's what you're gardening in, who knows what your pH is? It may be very low, probably very, very high. So if you get a soil test done and the pH is a lot higher than 6.5, you can add a little bit of elemental sulfur once or twice a year, and that will help bring down the soil pH and make it a little bit closer to 5.5 to 6.5. Fertilizing, very simple. Fertilize each plant with about a quarter pound of 888 or 10-10-10 or 666, and that's available at every lawn and garden center or big box store. Very, very commonly used fertilizer. You're going to fertilize in the early spring in April after the vines start growing. When you fertilize, you're going to kind of spread the fertilizer evenly in bands that spread out to about 1 foot out on both sides of the plant. No point fertilizing much further than that because the vast majority of its roots are within about a foot or so from where the vine is growing out of the ground. In future years, the fertilization rates you can increase to 3 or 4 pounds of fertilizer during March, and then again in June and July. So you do need to fertilize them, but they're not heavy feeders and they don't require any kind of really specific, special kind of fertilizer like a lot of other crops do. So weed control, very important, especially for young plants. They do not compete well with weeds. The weed competition is going to kind of suppress and stunt your vines a little bit. So weed control, especially early on, very important. And for most people, this can be done by hand. There are herbicides that are safe to use around grapes. You'd have to consult University of Florida recommendations and information on that. But I don't think that anybody watching this class is planning on such a large operation that you're going to need those kind of commercial recommendations. If you are thinking about that, please reach out to me, contact us, and we can get you the information you're going to need for weed control on a massive scale. For most people, just pulling them up by hand, but being diligent about it is going to work just fine. So grapes, because they are muscadine grapes, because they are a native plant here in Central Florida, don't normally suffer from really devastating insect and disease problems, but they do have a few. The two that I see most often, because I do occasionally get email questions with pictures or videos of problems that people are having with growing grapes. Most common one I see is a caterpillar that's called the grape leaf skeletonizer. So this is a very distinct, very pretty, I think, striped caterpillar. They kind of really stand out, and you never see one or two. You'll always see a bunch of them like this. And they will eat the heck out of your grapevines. They'll chew off all the leaves very, very quickly. Aphids are very common on grapevines also. We have a species of aphid that is black. So if you look at the growing tips of your grapevines, especially in the spring and summer, aphids really like the new growth, the new shoots, the new growing points. If you see a lot of little black dots on it, it's probably aphids. They're all very, very easy to control. If you ever have a caterpillar problem on a crop or a plant or even an ornamental plant, if you use a product that's called BT, that stands for Bacillus thuringiensis. This is a naturally occurring bacteria that you can get an insecticide for. You want to look for things, some brand names are Thuricide, Dipel, anything that's called organic caterpillar killer. If you turn the package or bottle over and start looking at the active ingredients, if you see Bacillus thuringiensis, that's what you're looking for. Very effective on caterpillars, doesn't kill anything else. So won't help with any other pest problem you have. But if your problem is caterpillars, BT is the safest thing for you to use for yourself, your family on food crops. Aphids are very easily controlled with insecticidal soap. Don't use dishwashing liquid. Save that for your dirty dishes. A lot of people like neem oil. Neem is fairly effective on aphids. It's either going to work really well or not at all. Neem is kind of one of those funny either all or none controls, but you could use neem also. So aphids are very easy to control. You're probably going to have to spray with insecticidal soap more than once, but 1, 2, 3 treatments, they should be under control. Another insect pest that could be a problem is thrips. Thrips are very tiny insects, and they come out in mass in the early spring. And when they feed on your plants, they poke into the leaves and stems, and they scrape it. And now the leaf is going to lose a lot of water and look really dried out, brown, mottled, damaged. If you think you have a problem with thrips, There is a control on the market now, spinosad. It's another naturally occurring bacteria, very safe to use, very effective on thrips, and very effective for caterpillars. So there are plenty of safe controls that you can use to help keep your few, you're probably going to have a few insect problems under control. Diseases, now keep in mind that muscadines a lot of times can be grown completely pesticide free. If you don't have an insect problem, if you don't have a major disease problem, you don't need to spray. Muscadines tend to be easy to grow. They don't need a lot of preventative spraying. They don't need an awful lot of really, really specific care. You do need to go out there and scout your plants on a regular basis, keep a close eye on them, get yourself a hand lens, magnifying glass, go out there and look for those little tiny insects on the bottoms of the leaves or the growing points. When you have a little bit of a problem, take care of it right away. And muscadines, there are a lot of growers that grow pesticide-free muscadines because it is possible to do that. We recommend for disease control, if you use drip irrigation and prune properly so that you get good airflow around the vines, that really helps a lot with lowering the problems that you might have with different various diseases. Fungal leaf spots, like plants that are growing really full, really tight, lots of leaves, no airflow, no fresh air, no sunshine in the center. So the center of the plants is dark, it's damp, it's humid, it's warm. That is what fungi really, really like. And they'll start to take a hold in the center of your muscadine mass, if you want to call it that. And you're going to have a disease problem. So if you stake them up, trellis them, prune them correctly, fresh air, sunshine is going to go a long way towards helping to reduce the problems that you have with diseases. If you start to have an outbreak of some kind of fungal leaf spot disease, and there's a number of different fungi that can be a problem on muscadines, they're usually not, but it can happen. You can use a copper fungicide during the summer because your main season or time of year for fungal disease problems is going to be summer, when it's really wet and rainy and hot and humid. It's hot at night. Fungi really, really like that, and you may have some problems. So copper fungicide should be labeled to be used on muscadine grapes, whatever brand you're purchasing, make sure you check that, and that should help fix up your problems with that. So harvesting muscadines, they kind of get harvested at a, I think, unusual time of year. They're very late harvesting. So if you watch Facebook, if you ever go online, if you enjoy going to local U-Pick farms, we do have U-Pick muscadine grape farms in Hernando County and the surrounding areas in Central Florida. They're always open late summer, like now. Generally, a lot of times in September, they're going to be open. So most varieties of muscadine grapes are ready to be picked anywhere between late July all the way up to September. So kind of late summer. And something that I thought I'd share, I ran across just recently, a researcher at LSU, Louisiana State University, put together a 4-part series on how to make muscadine wine. So you can learn from the expert. He's a researcher. He'll tell you how to do it right, how to do it safely. That is on YouTube. So if you go on YouTube or just Google search it, LSU, how to make muscadine wine, the 4-part series is there on YouTube. I haven't had a chance to watch much of it all the way through, but I recommend that if you have questions about how to make wine out of these grapes, watch his videos and ask him. I'm not the expert on that, but you can do it very easily. So propagation, once you have muscadine grapevines up and growing and you're having to prune them and watch for insects and diseases, you can start more. They're very, very easy to start from cuttings. If you take cuttings off of the ends of the vines, make sure that you have about 2 or 3 nodes or growing points at the end of that vine. Cut it off, start the cutting, Cuttings are easy to start. You put them in a container of moist soil, keep them moist, put them in a shady spot. They'll send out roots, and you have a whole nother plant. If you want to, you can start as many plants as you want. So even though from this workshop, you're going to end up with 3 muscadine grape vines, that's just for starters. If you want to increase that to however many you have room for, very, very easy to take cuttings. One of those plants where if you take 10 cuttings, 9 or 10 of them are probably going to survive. And that's a great way to very inexpensively increase the number of plants and production that you have. So for people watching this class and participating in this, if you have registered and paid for our workshop, we have both Welder and Carlos varieties of muscadine grapes. I initially ordered 2 trays of Welder, but the nursery where we get our plants from had issues, so we have half of them are Welder, half of them are Carlos. Both of them are bronze fruited varieties, and both of them are off patent. So if you want to start cuttings, you're free to. Technically, if you purchase patented plants, you're not supposed to propagate and start cuttings of them. But with both these varieties, it's okay. Welder is recently off a patent, and Carlos is a variety that's been around for many, many years. Carlos is very, very popular variety for both fresh eating and for winemaking. One of the recommended varieties for growing for wine production. You can pick those plants up at our office, and I'm going to have the address in just a moment, or at our Master Gardener Nursery this coming Saturday only. So our office is open 8 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. I'm not here a lot, but somebody else is, and plants will be here. I will be at our Master Gardener Nursery this coming Saturday, but just this coming Saturday, so not every Saturday, but this coming Saturday, I will be there with plants also. If you want to stop by, say hi, pick up your plants, walk around the nursery. If you stop by early in the morning, it's quiet and beautiful out there, birds and butterflies. You may want to stop by early instead of late because it's still getting a little bit hot later on. I'll be there on Saturday. So we want to remind everybody, if you ever have any lawn and garden questions, almost every Thursday morning at 10 a.m., we have a virtual plant clinic. And this is broadcast live on our Facebook page and also on our YouTube channel. So the best way to get information about that is to go to Hernando Extension, all one word.com. This is where we have a listing of all of our upcoming events, classes, coastal cleanup, workshop, online classes, in-person classes. It all ends up here. So bookmark this website, HernandoExtension.com. Check it frequently. That way you can keep on top of everything that we have going on. And like I said, if you ever want to join us, you have a question, join us at 10 a.m. on Thursday. We're almost always there. Every once in a while, we all get tied up and we have to cancel on Thursday. Or if Thursday's a holiday, something like that. But this is a great way to ask questions, and you'll have me and other people there to help answer your questions. I'm hard to catch in person at our office or on the phone, but Thursday mornings at 10, you can catch me there on Facebook Live to answer all your questions. So if you want the address to our office where you can go to pick up plants, we are on Aviation Loop Drive in Brooksville. We are at the front edge of the Brooksville Airport. If you're familiar with where the post office is, just off of Spring Hill Drive, they're right next door to the post office. There's our phone number. If you need better directions or more information, feel free to give us a call. There is my email address. If you have more questions about this workshop, any other workshop, problems you might be having with muscadine grapes or anything else, please feel free to shoot me an email. We'll look into your question. We'll get it answered. Send pictures. Lots and lots of pictures really help give me an idea of what might be wrong and what kind of recommendations and advice to give you. And with that, let me go and quit sharing here. And like I said earlier to the very, very first people that joined us, if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat box. If you look at the very bottom of your screen, the little box that says chat, go ahead and click on that, type in your question, and I'll go through them right now and do my very, very best to answer everybody. Eileen says she'll not be picking up her plants because she already has plenty. Muscadines are really good for that. You don't have to purchase a whole bunch of muscadine grape plants to get a lot of them growing. Like I said, even a small one next spring is going to grow to be big. Take cuttings, root them, plant some over here, plant some over there, give them to your friends, neighbors, relatives. Before you know it, you're literally in the muscadine business for yourself. And they can be very, very productive also. You can actually get a lot of eating and worthwhile fruit off of them. Okay, Carol, looks like you kind of hooked up with Eileen there for a couple of extra plants. Tiffany says, is it a host plant then? If you're asking about those caterpillars, the grape leaf skeletonizer, yes, native muscadines are going to be a host plant for them. And they do grow into a moth, a black moth, I believe, kind of nondescript. So any native plant is going to be a host plant for some kind of insect, because over thousands of years, plants and insects evolve. So all the native ones have native insects that feed on them, but the native insects don't wipe them out, because that's not a really good plan for survival. You know, if you wipe out your food source, you're not going to survive for years and years and be able to reproduce. So a lot of times, if you have some kind of a native caterpillar or other insect feeding on your muscadines, they're only causing a little bit of damage. You may not even need to treat or take any kind of action. Keep an eye on it. Like I said, those grape leaf skeletonizers, sometimes you end up with a large number of them, and they can eat a lot of leaves. So whether you choose to control them, you make that decision. We can recommend what to control them with. BT is the safest thing to use. Spinosad works very well on caterpillars also. But yeah, different native plants are host plants to different native insects. Carol asked a good question about she's seen the leaves and vines in the wild, but has never seen any grapes on them. Any ideas why? Yes, we do have different native species of muscadine grapes. We have the one species that you see, it grows really, really well in disturbed areas. So it grows well in people's yards, hedges, in recently cleared areas. It's a pioneering plant. It's one of the first things to come up when they build a road or clear land. The native wild ones tend to have like one female plant for every 10 male plants. All the domesticated varieties that have names and we grow to either eat or make wine are self-fertilizing. So each vine is going to have it's going to have flowers that have a male part and a female part. So you don't have to worry about, oh no, I have 20 muscadines growing and they're all male plants, I'll never end up with any grapes. That doesn't happen with the domesticated named varieties. That does happen with the wild varieties. So even the wild ones, sometimes you have female vines out there and they'll get little grapes. Wildlife and birds eat them and love them and enjoy them. A lot of times the wildlife will eat the grapes when they're still very small. They don't even have a chance to size up. The wild ones you can eat. They're not poisonous. They're not going to hurt you, but they're probably going to taste terrible. So stick with the domesticated named varieties, and that way you're going to end up with big tasty grapes and not the little wild ones. Bonnie, thank you so much for participating. It's great how quickly these classes fill up now and how much everybody benefits from them. Anne asks, do the muscadines get disease themselves, meaning the grape itself, like spotting and such? Yes, there are a couple of different bacterial rots that the actual grapes can get. So your vine grows in the spring, it flowers, you get grapes. The grapes during the summer get larger and larger. Eventually, they're going to get to be full size. They're going to get ripe. You're going to pick them. Sometimes right before that happens, the grapes will get spots. They'll get soft spots. They'll start to rot. You have to keep an eye open for that. And copper fungicide is going to be your best resource for keeping that under control. I believe that commercial growers will spray the fruit when it's still small and maturing to help protect against any possibility of diseases. But like I said, sometimes muscadines don't get diseases at all, and your muscadine, the grapes may ripen up and size up, and you may not have any problem at all or have to have anything to spray for. But to hedge your bets, you probably want to keep liquid copper fungicide handy and use it during the growing season. Once the vines are up and growing, we're going into summer, and then once or twice to protect the actual physical grapes on there before they size up and you pick them. And Tiffany says her passion vine got wiped out over spring, but has popped back up. Passion vines are a little bit different. We may do passion fruit one day. There are varieties of passion vines where it gets an edible fruit, and there's tips and tricks to growing them, but they can be productive. But the Gulf fritillary caterpillars and zebra longwing caterpillars love passion vine, and their caterpillars will eat up all the leaves. And you may think like, oh no, my passion vine is dead. There's no leaves, it's done for. Passion vines are very tough. They're very resilient, and they'll just pop out new leaves. So caterpillars almost never kill passion vine vines. They will eat all the leaves. The vines might look terrible, but they almost never die. They're going to come back, make more leaves, and those caterpillars, remember, turn into beautiful butterflies. So if one of your goals is to have beautiful butterflies, you have a butterfly garden, you enjoy looking at them, sitting outside with butterflies all around you, keep that in mind before you go spraying for caterpillars on your passion vine. Most times, if you just take a deep breath, figure those darn caterpillars ate all the leaves, and do nothing, your passion vine is going to be just fine. It's going to grow right back. You don't always have to go out there and intervene. Wendy says, I got Catawba, great plant from Walmart. Seems like this may be the one that gets the disease you mentioned. I'm not sure I don't think Catawba is a variety of muscadine. And I'm not really sure what type of grape that would be. If you shoot me an email, I'll go ahead and look it up and give you an idea of, keep in mind, if you look up Catawba and it says it's a variety of muscadine grape, it can do well here. May just have an issue with disease or some other kind of problem at the moment. If you look it up and it's a Concord grape, it's a European wine grape, it's one of those types of grapes, it's not going to do well. Those glassy wing sharpshooters will find it. It will get Pierce's disease, and it will die sooner or later. It always happens. That's why you cannot grow European wine grapes here. Dawn figured out how to share a picture here on Zoom. You have spider mites. So Dawn, you shared a picture in the chat, which is great. And it looks like you have spider mites on that mulberry tree. Spider mites can be a problem on just about every plant you have in your yard. There are an amazing number of host plants for spider mites, literally 1,000 different species of plant they will happily feed on. The way to control spider mites is if you catch them early, insecticidal soap works well. You can use neem oil, but insecticidal soap I've always had better luck with. If you have a lot of spider mites, like it looks like you do, you're going to have to spray a few times. Spider mites are out and active when it's really hot in the summer. So they come out kind of late spring, they become a problem. When it cools off in maybe a month or so, they're going to go away for the winter. They die back basically a lot for the winter. But you probably want to use insecticidal soap for right now to knock their numbers down. Tiffany would like a passion vine class. And Wendy says, no, it is a Labrusca vinifera. Yeah, that grape's not going to do well here. Sorry. And like I said, obviously, if you're buying from an online catalog, they sell all over the country. But I've seen a disappointing number of stores selling varieties of all kinds of different fruit that either does not do well here or will not grow here. So always do your homework and do your research first and know what you're looking for before you start snapping up grapes and blueberries and blackberries and everything else in the spring. Make sure you know what variety is going to do well here before you start investing your hard-earned money into varieties that do well in Ohio, but not Florida. Okay, let's see. We have any other questions here? Bonnie makes a good point to always be careful with insecticidal soap. Don't spray it all over a plant in the middle of the day if it's very, very sunny and hot. With insecticidal soap, you definitely want to spray in the evening. Give it the whole night to settle in. Some plants are sensitive to soap, so you may want to start with spraying just a couple leaves first. Make sure there's no bad reaction. And any kind of oil sprays that you use, neem oil, horticultural oil, dormant oil, all those things you cannot use in Central Florida during the heat of summer. When it's very sunny, very hot, you will sunburn the heck out of a lot of plants if you go out there and spray with an oil spray on a sunny day. Your plants, the leaves become dried out, damaged, scorched looking, and basically it causes sunburn on the leaves. But within the next month or so, the sun will be low enough in the sky, we're not going to have nearly as many problems with that. And Wendy said when she purchased her Catawba grape, which we've just learned is not going to do very well here in Central Florida, she found it in the clearance section, so it was only $4. Good price, good bargain, right plant, just wrong variety. So unfortunately, we see that a lot. So hopefully, if you're ever thinking about experimenting with a new crop, a new plant, always refer to University of Florida information. They have fact sheets on muscadine grapes, some blackberries, blueberries, peaches, plums, nectarines. They have fact sheets on them all, and lots of good information on what specific varieties are going to do well right here and which varieties you probably want to pass on because it's just not the best choice for here in Central Florida. So guys, thank you so much. I think we're going to stop screen sharing here. Like I said, if anybody viewing this workshop after the fact or on YouTube, or you're a part of the workshop, if you ever have any follow-up questions, I'll be sure to include my email in the description here, and feel free to reach out to us. We're always here to help. So with that, thank you so much, guys, and let me go ahead and stop the recording.